Then we'll ask Claudia for a roll call.
Gladly. Good afternoon, board members. President Millibar,
Here.
Director Estremera, Director Martin.
Present.
Thank you. Director Luna,
Present.
Director Chang,
Here.
Director Naptawi,
Here.
and Director Weed.
Yes, here, however, I need to make a statement, which I'm attending the meeting this afternoon from a private remote meeting location for just cause due to a physical disability. I am the only person in the room over the age of 18. That location is in Fremont, California, my office. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weed. We can go into closed session whenever you're ready, Director Millibar.
Okay, we'll move to our item 3. This is the closed session to discuss the potential litigation item on the agenda. Ms. Rodriguez, any public comments?
President Millibar, we have not received any public comment requests for this item.
Okay, we'll move into closed session and anticipate the meeting to start around 2 or maybe a little after.
President Millibar, it looks like we do have Director Estremera and Director Weed. I do want to acknowledge that Tony Estremera or Director Estremera is with us today. And he has to read the blurb that we provided to him.
Yes, now?
Please.
Yes, I'm attending the meeting this afternoon from a private remote meeting location for just cause due to a physical disability. I am the only person in the room over the age of 18.
And I'd also like to acknowledge that we have alternate Director Palmer on the line. And I do not see other alternate directors. We can proceed. Oh,
Okay, or reconvene after closed session. Josh, any report out of closed session?
No reportable action, President Millibar. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to item 4, open the meeting and pledge of allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Sorry. Public comment not on the agenda. If you wish to make a comment, we request you submit a request through the QR code, or you can press *9 if you're on the phone, and you will be recognized and you'll be able to make comments throughout the meeting. Moving to item 6, approval of minutes. We had a meeting in December 19th, 2024, and we need a motion to approve those minutes or any comments by any of the directors or the public.
President Millibar, I just want to confirm that we did not receive a public comment request for item 5 before we proceed with 6.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on the minutes before we approve?
Nope.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, roll call for,
Gladly. President Millibar,
yes?
Director Martin,
Aye.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Estremera,
Aye.
Director Chang,
Aye.
Director Naptawi,
Yes.
and Director Weed.
Hi, and I would also note that I'm attending remotely due to a physical disability. Thank you.
Thank you. meeting minutes approved.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7A, February monthly board report. Graham?
Thank you, Chair Millibar. Good afternoon. So I'll let Claudia get the monthly report going. So let's go ahead and go to section 1, please. Summary of work. First, before we go through our summary, I do want to highlight we're making good progress on the board report update. That's a whole formatting update that we're going through right now. I'm hopeful that we're going to have that ready to go for the March issuance of the next monthly report, and then we would be able to talk through that at the April board meeting. So we're still pushing, but our intention is to modify the look and feel of a lot of the components here to communicate progress on various key action items more succinctly, and try and do away with so many words and describing everything that's going on. I think the complexity of the work, the collection of all the activities that are coming along warrant a reset in terms of how we consider and present information to the board and to the public. So that's coming, pending. So with respect to the current monthly report, so this is looking at activities for January of 25. We did just complete most of our mid-year budget reconciliation. So this is going through the annual task orders and contracts that we use to distribute the funds for the year, assigning our scope of work to the various contractors and deliverables associated with that work. So we've just made it through that mid-year process of reevaluating progress, looking at where our mission may have shifted a bit. Oftentimes that's intentional. We do our best at the beginning of the year to identify the priorities, but it's inevitable that those priorities shift over the course of the year. So this mid-year is an opportunity to true up the contracts that we have. And what has been kind of the pattern for the past few years is we tend to have pockets of underrun that we want to potentially reassign elsewhere in the program. And to prevent us from committing more funds than we have approved by the board, we need to go through and pull some of that back and readdress those within the contract so that we have those funds available to dedicate elsewhere within the program. So it's a bit of work to do mid-year, but we found that to be a really beneficial approach, and we're almost done with that process at this point. A couple of other items, we're starting to as is reflected in those mid-year reconciliations, we had a big cleanup with respect to our deliverable management process within all of our task orders and contracts. Just really trying to pin down and better define the nature of a deliverable that's included in our contracts, and being a bit more clear and disciplined about what we document in the task orders and what we identify as deliverables. So that's just another example of some cleanup work that we've been pushing through, but I think it's all helping us point in a more efficient direction in terms of specifying and documenting deliverables, and then managing those through the year and ensuring completion of those activities. We're in the boardroom today. The boardroom audio update project has been completed, the audio and visual update project. So I think the Jennifer Malone in the back and the staff involved in that really deserve the credit for getting this done. I think it's a big improvement. I hope the board finds it beneficial. You'll notice the system functions a bit differently. It's a push to talk only system now. The audio hopefully is coming through clearer. We also have now audio over the audience area for different purposes. So it's a much more functional space, and I'm grateful to the team for tackling this and getting it done. In terms of our engineering work, it's still the same focus it has been. We've got the continued permit support activities. You'll hear some of those updates from Carrie Buckman later in the Environmental Program Managers Report. But our support of those activities remains one of our key priorities for the fiscal year. But we also now are focused on two other main thrusts, one being the continued evaluation of potential innovations associated with the design and construction of the facilities, as well as potential contracting innovations and other opportunities that we might be able to consider to better manage risk and improve the overall constructability of the project. Additionally, we're now setting our sights on a potential implementation timeframe that would come after the completion of the major permit activities and the next round of real major considerations by the participating public water agencies on implementation of the project, so that we're ready for that transition and we can efficiently move into that into that mode without missing a ton of time and being caught sort of flat-footed in that transition. So we're really now thinking quite a bit about what activities and revisions we need to deal with within the program to be ready for that transition when we get there. So Claudia, let's go ahead and go to the budget summary, please. So here we have our budget summary, 43 million. We have our current commitments listed at 34.583. So that's what we have currently allocated through contracts and task orders. We've now downgraded our estimate at completion, which is the second from the right column, down to 34.1. So this is an increasing underrun compared to what you saw last month. We've been carrying for the entirety of the fiscal year an underrun of about 6.5 million. That was associated with the geotech work that the board approved, but it was enjoined under the preliminary injunction. So we did not issue those funds to our geotech contractor based on that limitation. So we started the year with an underrun of about 6.5 million. Based on the recent mid-year reconciliations, we've now modified that underrun to 8.9. If history is any indication, by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year, I would expect that underrun to continue to grow. We would continue to accumulate smaller pockets of underrun. It's not really in anyone's best interest to try and sharpen the pencil too much at this midpoint of the year. And we still have sufficient unallocated reserve within the executive office task to handle change and potential modifications to contracts. But at the same time, we are starting to daylight additional underrun, and those mid-year reconciliations have started to true up some of the contract values so that we can start to reflect that now as we're at this midpoint of the year. The one caveat there would be if and when we are able to get back out into the field, whether it be for survey work or the initiation of geotech work later in the fiscal year, then we would start to better define that work and reissue that through task order modification. So we could start to eat back into that underrun if we find ourselves in that situation. So Claudia, let's go.
What's the surplus on the executive office?
It's mostly the unallocated reserve. So that's where unallocated reserve contingency resides within the fiscal year budget. So the vast majority of that number is associated with unallocated reserve. And as we pull funds back from contracts, so as we start reducing that commitment number as part of those mid-year reconciliations, oftentimes we start attributing those funds into reserve. So we might see that number grow as well through the year if we start refining things and pulling more money back from those task orders. So Claudia, let's go to the plot of actuals versus planned expenditures. So we have our blue line cutting across the cumulative value of expenditures totaling on the right-hand axis, 43 million. The blue bars are the planned monthly expenditures. Gold bars are the actual monthly expenditures, and the pink dashed line is the cumulative of actuals. So you can see the widening gap in terms of underrun largely formed through the summer and fall. We weren't out doing the geotech work that we intended and scoped. And as a result, we've got a pretty sizable underrun that we're accumulating here. December also was not surprisingly as high as was anticipated for workforce. There's typically a lot of vacations in there and holiday related travel. But I do expect for January, February, we should be getting back up to those November actuals, something approaching those November actuals. So through the remainder of the winter months, I would expect our actuals to come relatively close to the planned expenditures. And then you can see the surge in May and June, again, back associated with the conducting of a fieldwork program. So we'll see how things play out here over the rest of the fiscal year. But it's pretty, the visual tool here is pretty helpful to see how and when those underruns are accumulated through the year. So Claudia, if we could go, I did want to just highlight, we have a number of ongoing procurements. So if we could go to the procurement summary table. Thank you. So we have a number of procurements underway, several related to various business operations, different suppliers for software suppliers and vendors. We do have a new procurement that I did want to highlight at the very bottom, Executive Strategic Support Services. This is a new procurement that we intend to release here in the coming month or two related to various executive support services. So this is something I'm hopeful will get some attention and be able to attract a lot of very interested and qualified vendors to help provide these services. So I look forward to seeing how that process runs. We have our schedule at the very end of the report, but I think, you know, as this board has heard me comment, I think the value of this plot is really starting to diminish here. We've got generally fieldwork programs that are behind schedule as indicated by the status icon on the right. Everything else, these are just kind of activities that seem to extend beyond the bounds of the fiscal year. And so there really isn't a heck of a lot to glean from this format. Again, this is part of what we're revamping with the new monthly board report that's coming out. So maybe more as a demonstration of how to develop a better schedule. I look forward to showing you that next iteration with next month's monthly board report. Otherwise, I don't see issues though with respect to progress that we're making within the program. You know, that underrun is really not a function of work that should be done that isn't, other than what we've already been talking about with respect to geotech. But my expectation is that given the opportunity, we'll catch up, and I don't really foresee any major schedule impacts associated with those delays. Okay, that completes my summary, Director Chair Millibar. So if you have any questions.
Hey, Graham, if we can flip back to like page 9 of your budget summary, which are, and the visuals are, you know, really good. So I guess there's a couple of things that kind of, you know, struck out at me, and I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting, you know, this one correctly. So I think on the planned monthly expenditures, you know, you kind of show, you know, like a certain, you know, level of effort, you know, maybe like around $4 million mark, up all the way until like November. And then it, you know, kind of tails off significantly.
Yep.
You know, during the months of like December to April. Was that just kind of planned because of the anticipated geotech work and the ability to kind of get out in the field during that time, or?
Yeah,
In general?
that's
Okay.
it. If you take
Okay.
the difference between, you know, you see December through April is relatively steady with some
Right.
changes. That's based on the annual work plan build up. That's how
Okay.
we arrive at these projections at the beginning of the year. And then we accumulate, you know, cumulative to create the blue line across.
Right.
And so with the field work and having not been initiated, it's about 6.5 million. If you look at the amount you would generate above the gold bars and total it up, it's a little more than 6.5 million. So we've had some other efficiencies within the team at this point, but the vast majority of that delta is due to the field work, which hasn't been completed.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And then perhaps, you know, a question about like December. And you kind of mentioned, you know, between the, I guess, the dark blue and the gold bars.
Yep.
That's really because of vacations and so on.
Which
time
one?
off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And one could argue that should and could be in the forecast, but you never know how years are going to go. And so we tend not to sharpen the pencil quite that much.
Right.
We assume, you know, from a bit more macro scale, the work that we want to do and how it lays out over the course of the year. So it's not surprising that we end up with a bit of a dip in there with the holidays. And you can see it wasn't particularly reflected in the original projection, which to me is not really. You know, that's getting down to a level of detail that's pretty hard to predict at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And from the remote directors? No question?
No, President Millibar, no.
John Weed.
Do we have any public comment on Graham's report?
President Millibar, we do not.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7B, the roadmap of DCA activities. Can we begin with a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Millibar. I think really the theme of this year is transition for the program. We've been functioning in a planning and permitting support role for the past 4 or 5 years. But we're now, as I mentioned earlier, really starting to think through what will need to be in place for the implementation phase. Also thinking through potential innovations, et cetera, all of these things described in the monthly report. So I wanted to walk the board through some ideas and high-level objectives, and also included within this is a discussion of our transitions with respect to the DCA organization. I think it's time to start realigning ourselves into a structure that will allow for that transition and growth that needs to happen over the coming years, and can be adapted as we move through the phases, beginning now with this planning and permitting phase into a largely design focused period into a construction dominated period of time. So this staff presentation highlights some of those factors and then walks us through the in progress work we're doing to restructure the organization. So next slide, Claudia, please. So first, just starting with the overall schedule of the program. This is a schedule that we've been using this year to help convey the thinking that was first developed for the development of the updated cost estimate, and then to start queuing up some key milestones and transition points within the program. The major permitting activities being at the top and completing around the end of 2026, which would be followed by really the key decision by the water agencies to participate and implement in the design and construction of the project. So to meet that schedule and to meet those targets, there's a number of activities that we have planned, but really then becomes the important transition of bringing on feature design teams that would take over the design activities, take ownership of the various features to finalize those designs and tee them up for construction procurements and then overall delivery of the project. So it's the sequence of activities that have us now thinking about the transitions that are necessary, pointing us in a direction that will allow us to efficiently make these transitions, and recognizing that in order to deliver on the schedule that we've committed to with respect to the cost estimate and in our communications to the PWAs, there are activities beginning this year and beyond that start to affect that critical path schedule. And so making sure that we have a handle on all of those issues and that we're in a position to respond effectively. So in terms of the near-term activities, we've talked about it. There's a lot of geotech work, right-of-way planning. Those are really some of the key near-term activities in addition to the permit support work. So Claudia, if you could just go ahead and move to the next slide. We've summarized the key activities now through 27. Again, thinking about it in those 3 main focus points, the first being the environmental permit support activities. There's also now some mitigation monitoring and reporting support activities. That's for work that was identified in the EIR and now needs to be handled in accordance with that MMRP. We've also then got the getting ready for implementation work. So that's really thinking through that yellow pillar of activities, the project delivery planning, establishing our standards and templates and procurement related documents is also a focus over the next couple of years. Property acquisition right away. I skipped over the field work intentionally, does kind of straddle multiple objectives. We have the near-term need to obtain temporary entry and access for a lot of the geotech and survey work we have targeted over the next couple of years. There's, of course, a tremendous amount of work to be ready for potential property acquisition associated with implementation of the project. That type of work is also on the critical path. And so standing up and really focusing on the property acquisition right-of-way function of the team is a really priority and important aspect of the work at this point. Field work, we've got a number of various activities associated with geotech testing, environmental investigations, survey, right-of-way mapping, utility investigations, pilot studies. These are all identified on the schedule. They're all necessary to advance the engineering and understanding of the project, to improve the definition. To support those engineering activities, the innovation concept designs, those are definitely improved by additional subsurface information, allows us to tighten up some of those conservatisms that we know are in the current design of the project. Also starting to think more about how we tee up the design documentation for those procurements and continue with our support work that we're providing to the department's discussions around power supply for the project. So these are the main focus activities for the DCA over the coming years. We are, of course, working in a variety of ways to detail this out, both in terms of schedule and staff, but wanted to use this as a jumping off point to then shift gears and start talking about the organization of the DCA. Next slide, please. So this is our current organizational structure for the DCA. This is aligned with planning and permit focused work. The functions that you see highlighted in green: engineering, field exploration. Within engineering was our environmental liaison role, as well as a number of other support functions. Our mission to date has really been to support DWR's evaluation of alternatives, to collect the necessary information, initially Delta-wide, and now trying to focus on the selected Bethany Reservoir alternative to continue to support DWR's evaluation of the project impacts and obtain the necessary permits for implementation. So this structure was built solely around that. It's a very lean organizational structure. The items that you see identified in blue, what we identified as the program management office functions, originally 4 or 5 years ago were even much leaner than you see here, much more narrowly focused program management office. Over the past few years, the board has seen we've been bringing on individuals associated with different key roles, and we've been starting to stand up various aspects of that program management office. A couple examples: sustainability, some other folks that we brought on and introduced to the board as new managers who've come onto the program. So if you go to the next slide, our intention is to shift our structure to what I think would be something that looks hopefully very natural to the board. This is something that it is a somewhat meaningful change for us. A couple of key differences on this structure versus the previous slide. First of all, we're not distinguishing at this point between the program initiation or planning and permit support functions versus the program management office. This is one DCA organization. There cannot be separation between these different functional areas. We're establishing the new, what we call functional areas. Those are the pillars that you see underneath the headings of program support, engineering, environmental, real estate, communications, and legal. The new functional area program support now would include the items of administration, controls, contracts, procurements, assurances, and all of our information systems. Another key addition that we're bringing out and highlighting with this updated org chart is the need to designate an interface lead, and this turns into the role of interface management. As we transition this program into design and then even more so in construction, that becomes a really critical program level role to help identify issues that are being brought through the construction contracts, understanding the programmatic impacts with respect to schedule and risk, cost. So that interface lead at this early stage would eventually transition into more of an interface management role. Bringing out the environmental, real estate, those are equal level important work areas, functional areas for the DCA program, and so representing them across at equal level is also a key transition within the program. So this is the planning phase update that we're intending for the program. On the far right, you see and up at the top, you see the connections to the Department of Water Resources, as well as the participating public water agencies. And then off to the right, the coordination call outs. We're not trying to get into great detail with the structure to identify what's actually happening with those coordination activities. That is a very important set of activities. That is a very important item that does need to be addressed here in the coming years to be ready for an implementation timeframe. But just to flag that there is cross-functional integration with our partners at DWR and with the public water agencies intended. So next slide, please. Key aspect of this organizational structure is that it adapts as we move through the phases of the program. It's unlikely that we're going to have clean breaks. It's entirely possible that we could have planning and permit phase activities extending while we still are starting to onboard design phase consultants. So we could be straddling multiple phases. And there's even the most extreme condition where we could have all 3 phases that are essentially functional at the same time. So we can't have dramatic or stark changes in the structure that would really make it impossible for us to continue functioning in that sort of rearward looking view. So as it moves through as the organization moves through the different phases of the program, the org chart modifies in a couple of key ways, but doesn't change dramatically. So moving from the planning to design phase, for instance, a key change is that the engineering function starts to shift from the in-house engineering services to design management services, managing those feature design contractors who would come on through separate procurements, take ownership of those designs and finish them out through final design. So big changes within the engineering function would come. Also bringing on construction management input, early input at that point. That support would be provided for constructability reviews, big package support. So starting to provide that independent assessment and contribution from the construction management side of the program. The remaining functions that are listed are generally unchanged. Another item I'd like to flag up in the executive team is we're starting to reach a point where I think it would make sense to bring on additional executive office resources. And so we're just at this point starting to flag deputy director level individuals who would come on and continue to help spread and carry load within the executive team. Next slide, please. So then transitioning from the design to the construction phase, construction management would end up being really the dominant work stream. Engineering would transition to interface management, as well as engineering services during construction. We've also included startup and commissioning, which would come at the very tail end of the project, obviously, but that in itself also has a very important role in terms of accepting the overall completion of the project, ensuring fit for purpose, developing all the necessary training and manuals, and ensuring the system is fully integrated and ready to stand up for operations. The remaining functions that I listed are generally unchanged. Next slide, please. So in terms of what do we do next? So we're in the process of mapping all of our existing DCA team members to the updated planning phase org structure. We do have a couple of key individuals or key roles that we're going to be missing from that update. So we're going to work hard to start trying to plug those key roles as needed for the near term. A big part of this not only is to just restructure ourselves, but be very clear and document the roles and responsibilities of those different functional areas, establish what the expectations are and how those divisions will work together. This is a really important and necessary step. We've been working very much as a matrix organization with a lot of folks wearing a lot of different hats, but I think we're reaching the point now where we need to get more clear about the roles and responsibilities, and the expectations and accountability can therefore be a lot clearer from a program and organizational perspective. Once assigned, we also need to then work through all of our plans and processes to align those workflows with the updated org structure. So make sure we have reviews and approvals flowing through, crossing through the organizational structure in a way that they should, and reflective of the updated individuals. And then continue to develop, now looking at that box that was off to the right-hand side of the org chart, continue to develop the workflows, expectations, and requirements for how the DCA will work with, integrate, coordinate with DWR and the participating public water agencies. So that's really a key next step. But we're adopting this organizational structure and starting to migrate our systems over to this, which I think is a big step in the right direction. So with the next slide, I think it's just time for questions.
Director Luna?
Thank you, Chair Malabar. Thank you, Graham. Very comprehensive, and I'm excited to see the heads up on how the org chart is changing. On slide 3, on the buckets of focus, one bucket I didn't see. I saw legal peppered throughout the buckets, but the communications bucket was missing for me, and I feel that it's. Did I miss it? Or
you did. It's there on. Oh, sorry, slide 3. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, communications. You're right. It would just be sprinkled in and throughout this. But well, you're absolutely right.
So I don't know how others feel about it, but I just think that it probably should be its own bucket rather than peppered throughout. Just because
no, that's a fair comment.
Okay,
yeah, that's a very good comment, Director Luna, and it's an oversight. Yeah,
okay, that's the comments I have. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to recognize the amount of effort that goes into this. I know this is not easy to do. This is a complex organization and a complex project, and to transition from a largely permitting, planning support to design and construction are significantly different. You know, just it's a different organization, right, in each of these phases, and there's going to be a blend of it going on kind of in all phases. Great work. I just kind of had thoughts as I was thinking about this. And this is maybe a question that we don't have to address for maybe a couple of decades, but you know, at what point does the DCA itself sort of complete its main objectives, and is it post commissioning and kind of acceptance by DWR as a, can you just describe that a little bit?
Yes, happy to. So if you look at the construction phase operation, we really would wrap up under this schedule, main construction activities by the end of 2042. So we'd be working with each of those construction contracts to close out, determine fit for purpose, finalize and wrap up each of the individual construction contracts. But you still see there's a extension of road and overlay work that's required to deal with the roads that have been used for construction, make sure that everything is in good shape and returned back for public use. Site restoration, also, those are the construction areas of the project that are intended to be restored and put back into some other useful purpose, would extend into 2043. System startup and commissioning would be very heavily integrated with the Department of Water Resources as the ultimate owners and operators of the system. There's still details that we need to sort out in terms of exactly how that all would work and operate. But I think eventually it would be the Department of Water Resources who would receive the project. At that point, once it's fully accepted into operation, all systems have been integrated and turned over to the department. We would close out any remaining contracts, any legal issues, anything else that remains. And at that point, we would dissolve. So I think it's just a matter of how quickly those remaining activities close out, what kind of tail there is to some of that. And we'd be in a wind down mode to then dissolve and shut down.
Thank you.
You have a comment? Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, sir. Graham, again, I think others have said it, but yeah, this represents a huge amount of effort and thinking on what the work structure looks like. I mean, this is obviously a very big machine that we need, and I think how it's laid out will kind of find our success or not. I guess maybe it's just a couple of questions. Okay, so the interface I think with DWR is going to be important, and obviously at some point we're going to kind of finalize this. And I'd be curious to hear what DWR's input is in the process. So it's just kind of recognizing that's an important part of the discussion, as well as with the the PWAs. I think the other point or question for you is the timing. I think you kind of laid out in your slide deck what this organization looks like through 2027, or the functions. But I was just kind of thinking about logistically, how we kind of ramp up, because again, I think one of the reasons why I think, the PWAs were asked to, provide certainty on the funding, for the next, 2 or 3 years is to provide certainty, for the organization. I think we had a lot of real painful discussions about, if we didn't do that, then, would, the talent pool that you have, go elsewhere and look for, other opportunities. And so, kind of looking ahead, we want to be optimistic and say, okay, this is going to go forward, and so you're going to have to ramp up, right, to get, the structure and the talent that you need. So I don't know if you, thought that far ahead in terms of, when we might start looking for talent to kind of, patch in, some of these, potential gaps, if you will.
That's exactly the thinking that's behind the restructuring and reorganization. First and foremost, identification of gaps, and then really laying out a thorough work plan. So we've been working for years now with the planning and permit support focus, which this board has been involved in the budget development process for those years. And identification of the scope of work is sometimes a challenge. We know we need to be responsive to whatever needs that the department has. At the same time, we've done our best to manage the remaining budget and keep the project moving forward in ways that are within our control and consistent with the status of the project. I do see now a significant uptick in terms of where the program is going, the staff levels that are going to be required. We've committed to a scope of work, which is demonstrated by this schedule, although the funding that's been approved takes us through the end of 2027. There's work activities that we're now starting to trigger that are connected to that schedule. And had that funding not been approved, this schedule would not hold. But we're into a position now where we feel pretty confident about the trajectory we're heading. So there's been a lot that's been kind of stacking up behind waiting for the various approvals, but it's my opinion, we've reached a critical mass on the approvals and we're now pushing ahead. So we're starting first with a restructuring of the organization. Then we start building and augmenting our resources to match the work plan.
Are there any other questions of Graham on the DCA activities? Okay, any public comment, Ms. Rodriguez, on this item?
President Millibar, I do not have any comment requests that I've received to date, or sorry, during the meeting for any of the items on the agenda.
Thank you. Our next item is 7C. We'll consider a resolution on the health, safety, and security policy. Can we begin with a staff report?
Thank you, Chair Millibar. Greg Boffman's going to join us. He's our health and safety manager. So Greg, take it away when you're ready.
Director Millibar, directors of the board, good afternoon. I'm here today to go over the health, safety, and security policy for the DCA. Hopefully in your package, you should have that as well as a draft resolution. This policy, if approved by resolution, essentially establishes health, safety, and security for the DCA as a core value, which, as I believe, is very important. It does have a policy statement that covers 7 tenets of the DCA as far as how health, safety, and security is perceived, and also identifies responsibilities for DCA staff members, as well as contractors, consultants, sub-consultants, and essentially anyone who is a part of the Delta Conveyance project. That being said, it also establishes a hierarchy in terms of safety responsibilities within the organization. And it is good, or it's a policy that is effective and applicable to how the DCA operates today, but it is also scalable for how the DCA may operate tomorrow. As you can see in the policy, it refers to employees. And although the DCA does not have employees, we didn't want to leave that out just in case, so we didn't have to come back and change the policy down the road. But essentially, it's a fairly straightforward policy, and it will establish, again, health, safety, and security as a core value. And it is essentially the policy that dictates how all of our programs, plans, and procedures are drafted into the future. And I don't know if it's pretty short and sweet, but if there are any questions.
Any questions on the health, safety, and security policy before we consider a resolution?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And, this is definitely one of the important underlying issues that, I think a lot of organizations don't think a lot about, so I guess maybe my general question is, I know we borrow, pretty liberally, I think, from metropolitans, policies and so on. Did we do that in this case? Or I was just kind of wondering how this was kind of crafted.
So long before I got the DCA, there was a DCA health and safety policy that was already floating around in the ethosphere of our SharePoint system. A few months ago, we determined that we needed to clarify some things with what was going on with our current health and safety policy, and also get a board resolution on record, which we did not have one at that time. So myself, general counsel, and the executive director got together and redrafted what was already existing, and then clarified some of the things that we felt the DCA needed to clarify in terms of health, safety, and security amongst ourselves and contractors, consultants, subconsultants, and things that may need to be clarified for the future is how we did it.
So if I could add, Director Chang, and thanks, Greg, that's a perfect explanation. You know, it's been my view that we bring policies to the board to consider these tenants, set the high level goals and objectives, and then we work underneath that to then decide and work with the partners to develop implementation plans and structure around that. So I think this, but the benefit that I've seen in taking this approach is we always can go back to this policy and reflect and make sure that we're consistent with. We use it as a set of guideposts for the development of more detailed information as we work forward. So the tenants themselves, the overall commitment to health, safety, and security is a very high level commitment. But underneath that, we have a lot of detail work. We have existing plans in place, but we do see a need to refine and start thinking more about the more complex situations where we have sites, for instance, occupied by multiple entities, multiple agencies, how health and safety is going to be managed efficiently so that we're not trying to build the plane and fly it at the same time, so that we have plans in place and we know exactly how we want to respond when issues occur.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, President Millibar. Extremely supportive of a document like this. Specifically, I want to call out my appreciation for bullet 7, which is kind of the stop work authority. That really speaks to, right, if there's unsafe conditions and it's someone's call, we can stop work and assess. I did have a couple of thoughts, and maybe this kind of related to what Director Chang was mentioning, but there was mention of kind of the DCA site, work site versus a DCO or DWR work site. And kind of goes back to our last item about organization and how that's coordinated. I think getting ahead of that before an issue comes up and deciding who is responsible or who's making the call will be really important, especially in this realm of, these issues. So I'm curious to see how that sort of plays out. And then probably, if there hadn't been collaboration with DWR and their current health and safety related policies and procedures, maybe there warrants a conversation. Also, just, minor language clarification would be helpful in the policy where it says under section 3, these measures and requirements will remain in effect for the entirety of the DCP. So it would help to understand at what phase are we talking about, pre-construction and construction phase, and including, or kind of until the DCA is dissolved or something to that effect. It's a little unclear, but that's just my minor comment.
Good comments. It's intended to be the entirety of the program until the DCA is resolved.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe the last thing, more of just a practical thing, we're going to require our consultants and contractors to comply with the policies that we set forth. Great, but is there kind of a checking effort, or how do you verify that, and what level does it go down to? Does it go down to subs? I'm just curious. This can be a challenging one to administer.
So yes, it's true. Contractors, consultants, anybody working on the project does need to also provide the DCA with their own hazard program or health and safety program. It does come to me through contracts in the onboarding phase, where I do read through their policy and make any comments or suggestions, or ensure that their what we call HASP or health and safety policy is compliant with DCA's health and safety policy and any other programs we have in place before I sign off. And that all will happen or should be happening before work begins. So that is part of our health and safety plan, whereas this policy is actually just above the health and safety plan currently in place.
Thank you.
Director Anaptawi, I think just to add to the statement. So Going back to the org restructuring topic that we just went through, this would fall under the program support function. And so in thinking through how the various activities are going to be developed, first from a DCA requirement perspective would fall under the program support function, developing all the necessary requirements, the systems, ensuring that we have the appropriate clarified requirements all come from within the program support function of the organization. Then it's up to those more in the engineering, construction, and other implementing arms of the organization to comply and develop the necessary materials that respond to those requirements. And then we have, again, within the program support function and where Greg's role is clear, to ensure compliance and report up and out of the organization. So that's a distinct, that's a distinct role for the program support function. It applies to a number of other similar topics, but these are new clarifications that we're now creating within the organizational structure that did not exist previously, when our sole mission was to collect information and do the necessary engineering to support DWR's evaluation of alternatives. We now need to start transitioning into a different mindset. So this is an important but singular example of many similar topics that we're going to have to sort through over the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I would like to propose the following resolution. Whereas the Board of Directors wishes to adopt a health, safety, and security policy as set forth below. Now therefore, the DCA Board of Directors resolves as follows. Number one, the Board of Directors hereby adopts the health, safety, and security policy attached to this resolution as Exhibit A and incorporated by this reference. Number two, the Executive Director is authorized and directed to amend all existing consultant and similar agreements to ensure that such agreements are consistent with the provisions of this policy if necessary. The Board President may amend the Bradner Consulting LLC agreement if necessary to ensure that such agreement is consistent with the provisions of this policy. This resolution will be effective upon its adoption, and I need a second.
Second.
You can take his.
Okay, we have a resolution and a second. Could you pull the board, Ms. Rodriguez?
President Millibar, I did not hear who called for, or who moved first for motion.
I propose the
Okay, you
resolution.
proposed it. Thank you. Okay, I will call the roll call now. President Millibar,
Here, approve.
Director Martin,
Aye.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Stamera,
Aye.
Director Chang,
Aye.
Director Anaptawi,
Yes.
and Director Weed.
Aye.
All right. Resolution approved. Thank you.
Are there any public comments on this item?
President Millibar, we have not received any.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8, reports.
Thank you. Thanks, President Millibar. So my report's in the packet on page, in item 8A. Just two administrative updates which are noted, which I could just kind of briefly go through. The first is just a reminder that Ms. Rodriguez has provided notice that Form 700s are due by April 1st, so please make sure to get those filed. The second is just an update on a new law which took effect January 1st, AB 2302. This law modifies the number of times that directors can call in from a private meeting location for just cause or in an emergency. And we of course have two directors utilizing those provisions this afternoon. The law doesn't really change the requirements related to participation with one important exception, which is how the number of times you can use the exception is calculated. So under the new requirements, the one that applies to DCA, of course, is the first bullet point in the packet, which is if there is 2 meetings or less per month, that should not per year, per month, It's 2 meetings per year if the legislative body regularly meets once per month or less. And then I know the number of you participate in meetings, participate in bodies which meet more regularly. So I've included the other requirements. So if your legislative body meets twice per month, you get 5 times per year, and then 7 times per year if the legislative body meets 3 times or more per month. That's all I had. Happy to answer any questions.
No public comment?
President Millibar, we have not received any comment requests for the staff reports.
Okay. Do we need to ask that question on every item?
President Millibar, we have a note here at the top of the agenda on of the staff reports that indicates that we take all public comment for staff reports at the beginning of this item, and we did not receive any.
Oh, okay, thank you. Item B, next is the treasurer's report. Ms. Catano? Is she on the screen?
I'm on, I'm sorry. I was not able to unmute very fast. So good afternoon, everybody. So this is report is for December and ending January 31, 2025. As of December, we did have about $2,319,020 in our fund. We received from the DCO $5,426,445. But at the same time period, we paid bills of $4,551,621. So as of January 31, 2025, we had a balance of $3,193,842. At the same time period, when we balance our receivables versus our payables, any advances we get, the $800,000 we usually get as advances, our net position was $1,247,902. So that's just the balances and the net position for as of January. You have schedules showing the details of what I just discussed. As you know, we no longer give you budget versus actuals because we wanted to make sure that we don't conflict with the executive's office reporting because there's time delay. So we only report those at the end of the year. But everything else is on the report, and I am happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Catano? Go ahead, Mr. Dali.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Kassane. On the report, I just had a question. I know it came up, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or so, that there was sort of a cash balance challenge where it was very little in cash on hand. And I don't know, I was concerned at the time, like, is it going to be a problem for, making payments and so on? As the organization transitions into spending more with design and construction, it'd just be helpful to understand how well our cash flow is doing in terms of, being able to meet ends meet, month over month. So just looking forward to your advice there.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring this up. In our prep meeting, we sort of touched this a little bit. So to avoid not having any money to pay just a small regular bills that we can't hold up, like I think I would say leases and a few things, we have they advanced us the 800,000. So that's always there to just take care of the small little bills that we can't wait. What the DCA does with our budget and everything, the DCO rather, they hold on to the money. These receipts come to us once it's approved, and we hold on to the receipts. And we request funds to pay the receipts. That's why there's always, this is actually really high, 3 million balance for us is high. So they will pay us as the receipts come on. It is a little bit of a challenge, in my opinion, if we start having construction payments. So when we get to that, I really would like to have a different conversation with DCO about construction dollars and how those are spent, because typically they can't wait and we can't go back and forth. So you might have to have a different process for the construction dollars. I think it's mandatory. We should have a different process for construction dollars.
I appreciate that insight. Thank you. Yeah.
Graham, do you have a comment on that?
I appreciate the treasurer's comments, and I think this is, again, one of those items that we're just gonna have to sort through over the next couple of years. So, I think right now the process is working well for the scale of work that we're doing. But I think everyone appreciates, as the treasurer mentioned, I think everyone appreciates that we will be approaching a different set of conditions. But we've got time. We need to sort through it and start determining how this is gonna work during the implementation phase of the program.
Well, once the construction is underway and the project is approved and the bonds are sold, won't the whole structure of payments change?
I can't answer that at this point, Director, Chair Millibar, because again, we're gonna have to just work through the details of those arrangements with DWR, our treasurer. You know, we're gonna have to just kind of reimagine what we foresee as being a workable set of conditions. So at this point, I can't hypothesize what it's gonna be.
Yeah, and I agree with that. This process works okay. Once we corrected the 800,000, construction laws to me should be in trust, and we should have access to the trust to pay the bills. So as Graham said, this is a conversation we need to be aware that we need to have with DCO when we get to that point.
Very important question. Okay, moving on to item C, moving to communications. Valerie.
Good afternoon, Board, President Millibar. We're adjusting our presentation content this month to provide a little more of a show and tell element to the work we're undertaking. So if we can move that forward, thank you. Videos, we continue to add to our DCA video library. The team has uploaded onto our DCA website an updated version of Understanding the Work of the DCA. This is a brief video designed to help stakeholders understand our role and the scope of the organization within the greater DCP structure. It has been translated into Spanish and Chinese and is being pushed out through digital outreach channels in addition to being posted on our website. Next. DCA Digest, as the project continues to pick up momentum, the amount of new information that needs to be reported out is also increasing. To ensure we are maintaining our commitment to transparency, we're kicking off what we're calling DCA Digest, a monthly e-blast that will provide updates about planning progress, design refinements, project permitting, and new informational materials, providing greater understanding of the project and the components. So we're excited about this. I know that some of the agencies have asked that we kind of help move that information along more frequently so that the boards can receive that information more frequently. So we're excited to be moving in this direction. Next. Community benefits. As a reminder, the discussion draft of the Community Benefits Program Implementation Plan and Guidelines is out for public review. The deadline for public comment is March. There is an online portal where stakeholders can provide feedback. So that timetable is coming up. So we wanted to make sure that they can make their comments. And then the next piece. We've updated the DCP virtual tour, which is a 20-minute long video providing a detailed review of the project alignment. For this report, we've organized a collage of brief snippets of the video to demonstrate the type of information viewers will find as the video progresses. Is that moving along? Yes, it is. The video provides video sweeps, mapping views, an explainer voiceover, some component animations, and detailed information about construction logistics. It identifies the specific locations of each shaft, the intakes, and the pumping plant using clearly recognizable geographic markers and street names. It also outlines anticipated construction and land use effects, providing estimated acreage of construction versus finished project sites. I'll note that all of this information is derived from the project EIR. And I also want to note that this is a snapshot of project design as of the end of 2024. As you know, the project design is still being refined and we anticipate ongoing adjustments. So we're excited about that. Again, these are just snippets. And then coming soon, a new video providing animated renderings of the DCP's engineering components will be uploaded to the DCA website March 1st. The visuals are striking and provide more detail of the use and process for each component needed for development of the DCP. So we're really excited about this. We think that you'll enjoy taking a look. That is it. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions of Valerie? It looks like a very well done presentation. I'll be interested in looking at it and sharing it with my agency, as were the other directors.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I guess move on to item D, report of the DWR Environmental Manager, Carrie Buckland.
Thank you, President Millibar and members of the board. A few updates on the environmental side today. We did receive our incidental take permit from the Department of Fish and Wildlife last Friday, which is a really major milestone for the permitting, and we're really happy to have it. The incidental take permit documents that we are avoiding, minimizing, and fully mitigating any impacts to threatened and endangered species under the California Endangered Species Act. So this is the permit that we need under CISA to move forward with construction, operations, and maintenance. All are included in the permit. So very, very big, very exciting. Additionally, this week we had the start of our water rates hearing. So that was on Tuesday. The water rates hearing started with policy statements. Policy statements are part of the hearing, and they're important. They're not part of the evidence that is considered sort of the case of the hearing. They are instead a way to explain to the board the policy support for the project. And as such, we had a number of PWA people come, and so many of your agencies came and spoke, and thank you for that. The next step is that the opening statements of the hearing will start on March 24th and 25th, and then DWR will be presenting the case in chief for the change in point of diversion throughout the month of April. And I think those are the key activities I wanted to mention. So thank you. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions?
Oh. I guess we're all still going through learning pains with this new system. I mean, it sounds fantastic when it works, but no, I just want to commend, Ms. Buckman and her team for getting through the incidental take permit. I know, this has been a real challenge, let's just say, and not to single anybody out, but I think, Dr. Grimaldo, certainly has been a huge piece of that. So, appreciate the efforts, and, just want to celebrate, this particular moment with the department, and, for us on this, I think it's a real key milestone. I think you kind of understated it. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree with his comments. That's a big one. So hopefully we'll do good on the injunction and other things, so we can keep going. Any other questions?
I do, President Milmar. Not to conflate, and I'll look to counsel on this, but the community benefits, is that something that we can then put on our next board meeting? Just to hear back. I was gonna ask the question now, but I won't. So I'll wait till then, because it closes at the beginning of next month.
I should mention, we have the closure date on March 1st. I think Val had the same date. It has been pointed out to us that that's a Saturday, so we will accept comments through March 3rd, Monday.
Through Monday. Okay. Looking forward to hearing that.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the 8E, verbal reports. Are there any verbal reports from anyone?
President Millibar, I do. If I may. I just wanted to announce that my alternate has been appointed to for this committee and for the Finance Committee. And it will be Director Jackie McMillan. She represents Cayegua's Municipal Water District. She's very engaged in Delta issues, chairing the Delta Ad Hoc Committee at Metropolitan, And I've invited her to come in person and participate with us as much as possible. And she says she's up for the task. So just wanted to give you that heads up, and hopefully she'll be attending in person. The next meeting, you can get to meet her then. Thank you.
Thank you. Under future agenda items. Oh. Sarah Palmer has her hand up, so I guess we need to see what she has to say.
Okay, I just wanted to say that, that Zone 7 and several of the folks here, agencies here, we were at the request for approval of the point of diversion. And even though we can only urge recommendation for that, it was heartening to hear as many people speaking in favor of the point of diversion. And we from Zone 7, we were there and taking part in this. So that was it.
Thank you for your comment, Sarah.
President Millibar, just one last comment, sort of in line with Director Luna's comments there. I also wanted to acknowledge we have a new alternate director from Santa Clara Valley Water District, Shiloh Ballard, and alternate director Ballard has been in attendance today. So I just wanted to acknowledge that transition and her attendance today.
Very good. Any other?
President Millibar, I just one comment in response to Director Luna's report on Jackie coming on as an alternate. She's an old friend of SCV Water. She was originally on the Cascade Lake Water Agency Board, and she was one of the original directors on SCV Water. So she'll be an excellent alternate. I'm anxious to make connections again with her.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments or reports from anyone? For the public comments, no comments? Well, the meeting is adjourned.